In a small African village by a wide and gentle river, morning always came with sound. The sound was not from the birds or the rushing water, but from Amina's drum. Long before the sun rose, before smoke rose from cooking fires, her hands began to move. The rhythm was steady, like a heartbeat for the whole village. Each beat said, "Wake up, it is a new day." The people smiled when they heard it, for they knew Amina's drum meant life had begun again. Amina was not like most women in the village. While others cooked, fetched water, or tended the fields, she carried her drum everywhere she went. It was not just an instrument to her. It was her voice, her friend, and her strength. When she played, she felt free. The drum spoke things that words could not. The elders said that when Amina drummed, even the river listened. Her husband, Cato, would sit by the door of their small clay house, half asleep and half smiling. He always teased her and said, "Amina, you beat that drum harder than life beats me." She would laugh, toss him a playful look, and keep playing. The whole village knew about this joke. It became a saying among them. The children laughed every time they heard it, and even the old men smiled when the morning rhythm began. Cato loved his wife deeply, but sometimes he wished for quiet mornings. The sound of the drum was strong and endless, shaking the walls and echoing through the huts. He would pull a cloth over his ears, hoping to sleep a little longer, but the beat found him anyway. Still, he could never stay upset. When Amina stopped playing, he missed the sound. It was as if silence took the warmth out of the air. As Amina played each day, her rhythm told stories. She would think of the river, of rain, of harvest, and of hope. Her fingers moved fast, her palms slapped hard, and the drum answered her in deep tones. The people said her music could call the wind and chase away sadness. Some even said that the ancestors danced when she played. Amina did not think much about these things. She only knew that drumming made her heart feel light. When she was a little girl, her father had made her first drum from a hollow tree and goat skin. He told her, "The drum is like a person. It speaks if you listen." Since then, she had never gone a day without playing. Her husband, Cato, was a fisherman. Every day he took his small wooden canoe into the river, hoping to bring back fish for their home and the market. Sometimes he caught many, sometimes few. The river was kind but also unpredictable. Cato worked hard, though the waves were not always in his favor. He respected Amina's talent, but he also wondered if her music meant she did not need him. One morning, as Amina played, Cato watched her from afar. The early sun touched her face, and he saw how happy she looked. Her eyes were closed, her body swayed, and the drum seemed to breathe with her. For a moment, Cato forgot his worries. He felt proud. He remembered how the people praised her during festivals. "Amina's drum is the heartbeat of our land," they said. He knew they were right. When her rhythm changed, children came running to dance. Their feet kicked up dust, their laughter mixed with the sound. Old women clapped along, their bracelets jingling. The morning became alive. It was not just music, it was the soul of the village waking up. But Amina's drumming was not only for joy. Sometimes, when she felt tired or worried, her beats became slower, softer, deeper. On those days, people could hear the sadness in her rhythm. The villagers often said they could tell her mood just by listening. Her drum spoke her heart louder than her words ever could. Cato noticed this too. One afternoon, he came home early from fishing. He heard her playing a slow, heavy rhythm. He stood by the doorway and listened. When she saw him, she smiled faintly but kept playing. He sat beside her, feeling the beat travel through the floor. For the first time, he placed his hand on the drum. It was warm. It was alive. Amina looked at him and said softly, "The drum is our story, Cato. Every beat means we are still here." He nodded but said nothing. He did not fully understand, yet he felt something shift inside him. Days passed, and Amina's fame spread to nearby villages. People invited her to perform at weddings, harvest feasts, and even ceremonies for the elders. She was proud, but she never forgot her mornings by the river. That was where her spirit felt at peace. She said the river's voice helped her drum better. Every dawn, before she played, she would sit by the water and listen. The river moved slowly, whispering secrets to the wind. Then she would lift her drum and begin again, slow, soft beats that grew faster and louder until they filled the sky. The sound joined with the cries of birds and the chatter of people waking up. Sometimes travelers passing through the village would stop and ask, "Who plays that drum?" The children would answer proudly, "That is Amina, the drum queen of the river." They would point toward her hut, where the smoke from their small fire rose like a flag. Even when the dry season came and the earth cracked, Amina did not stop. The people said her music brought rain. When clouds gathered and thunder rolled, the children cheered, saying, "Amina's drum has spoken to the sky again." She would smile, though she never claimed the power. She only said, "The drum knows what to say when hearts are true." Cato continued to fish and provide for their home. Though sometimes he wished for more peace, deep down he knew the truth. Amina's drumming kept their lives alive. Without her rhythm, the days would feel empty. Each morning ended with her final beat, one loud strike that echoed across the hills. That sound meant it was time for work, for life, for laughter. People stepped out of their huts with smiles, children ran to school, and old men stretched their backs, ready for another day. And there, beside the river, Amina sat with her drum beside her husband. He watched her hands, strong and sure, and wondered how a simple rhythm could carry so much life. He did not say it aloud, but in his heart he knew, her music was the spirit of their home. The drum was not only wood and skin. It was love, hope, and memory. Each beat told their story, the story of a woman who woke the village, the river, and even her husband's heart. Cato was a quiet man. He spoke softly and moved slowly, like the calm river he fished from every morning. The people of the village often said that Amina's drum spoke enough for both of them. While her beats filled the air with sound and energy, Cato's world was one of silence and water. He loved his wife deeply, but their lives were built on two very different rhythms, one loud and alive, the other soft and still. Every morning before the sun rose, Cato pushed his small wooden canoe into the river. The air was cool, and mist covered the surface like a blanket. He worked hard, casting his net again and again, waiting for the fish to come. Some days the river was kind and gave him plenty. Other days, his nets came up empty, heavy only with water. Those were the days he felt the weight of failure pressing on his shoulders. When he returned to the shore, tired and quiet, Amina's drum would already be sounding through the village. The beats were strong and proud, echoing across the water. To Cato, they were beautiful but also painful. Each beat reminded him of what he did not have: success, recognition, joy. The whole village praised Amina, calling her the spirit of sound and life. Cato smiled and clapped with them, but inside he felt smaller each day. He did not envy her, not truly, but sometimes he wished he could give her more. He wished the river would reward his effort the same way the drum rewarded hers. Amina's hands created music that everyone could hear. His hands pulled in nets that sometimes gave him nothing at all. One afternoon, as he mended his net under a tree, a neighbor named Sephew stopped by. "Cato," Sephew said kindly, "you are a lucky man. Amina brings joy to the whole village. Her drumming makes our hearts dance." Cato smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, she is special." But as Sephew walked away, his smile faded. He wondered if anyone would ever say that about him. That night, after a long day with few fish, Cato sat by the fire outside their hut. Amina was cleaning her drum, her fingers gentle as she rubbed oil into the skin. The firelight danced on her face. "You should rest," she said softly. "You work too hard." He looked at her and wanted to speak, but the words stayed stuck in his throat. Instead, he just nodded. He was proud of her, but he also felt lost in her shadow. The next morning, he left for the river earlier than usual. The stars were still out, and the air was cold. He rowed far, farther than he ever had before. The water was deep and dark. He threw his net and waited. Minutes passed, then hours. Still nothing. He sighed and looked toward the village. He could faintly hear Amina's drum echoing in the distance. It was faint but clear, strong and sure, as if calling to him from another world. He closed his eyes and listened. Even out there, far from the shore, her rhythm followed him. He wondered what it would feel like to make something so powerful, something that reached hearts and never failed. His chest tightened. He loved her sound, but he could not escape it. It reminded him of his silence. When he finally returned home with an empty net, Amina ran to meet him. "No fish today?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "The river was quiet," he said. She touched his arm and smiled. "Then rest. Tomorrow it will speak again." Her words were kind, but they felt light, like air. He wished they carried weight, the kind of weight his net never had. That evening, the village held a gathering. Amina was asked to play. The drums began, and people clapped, danced, and sang. Cato stood at the back, his hands in his pockets. He watched her, her face glowing, her body moving with grace. The sound filled the night sky, and the crowd moved as one. He tried to smile, but his heart felt heavy. When the song ended, everyone cheered. Amina looked toward him and smiled, proud and happy. He raised his hand weakly and clapped, but his eyes were sad. Later, as they walked home together under the stars, she noticed his silence. "You did not dance tonight," she said. He answered, "I was tired." She nodded but didn't believe him. She reached for his hand. "You are quiet lately," she whispered. "Are you unhappy?" He looked at her, wanting to tell her everything, about the empty nets, about the way her drum made him feel both proud and small, about how silence was becoming his only friend. But he only said, "I am fine." Days turned into weeks. Cato kept fishing, and Amina kept playing. The sound of her drum became louder as her fame spread. People from other villages came to hear her. Sometimes they even brought gifts, maize, cloth, fruit. Cato thanked them politely, but inside he felt more invisible. He told himself he should be proud, and he was, but pride and pain often shared the same heart. One evening, the wind was strong, and the river waves hit hard against the shore. Cato sat by the water, looking at the moon's reflection trembling on the surface. His canoe rocked gently beside him. He thought about how the river and Amina were alike, both wild, both alive, both things he could never truly control. Behind him, he heard the distant sound of her drum. Even from far away, it found him. The beats rolled over the land, touching the trees, the water, and his heart. He smiled sadly. He realized that he could never run from her rhythm. It was part of his life, like breath. That night, when he returned home, Amina was waiting. She had prepared food and set his seat beside hers. "I saved you some," she said, her eyes gentle. He sat quietly, eating slowly. After a while, she began to drum softly, not for the village, not for the world, just for him. The sound was low and calm. It felt like the river on a quiet morning. He looked at her and saw that she was watching him, smiling faintly. In that moment, he understood that her music was not his enemy. It was her way of loving, her way of speaking to a world that listened when she played. And maybe, he thought, it was her way of speaking to him too. He did not say much, but when she finished, he reached out and took her hand. It was rough from drumming, but warm and strong. "Your music is beautiful," he said softly. She smiled. "And your silence is strong," she replied. They both laughed quietly. From then on, when Amina played, Cato no longer felt small. He began to listen with different ears, not hearing his failure, but her joy. He still fished, still faced empty nets, but now, when he heard her drum in the distance, he smiled. The sound was no longer a reminder of what he lacked, but of what he had, a woman whose rhythm made even his quiet heart beat a little faster. And though silence still lived between them, it was no longer cold. It was the kind of silence that held peace. It was the silence between two heartbeats, between two rhythms that belonged to the same song. The sky was gray that evening, heavy with clouds that moved like dark smoke across the horizon. The air felt strange, thick and restless, and the river, which was usually calm and gentle, had begun to change. The wind blew hard through the tall grass, and the trees swayed and whispered warnings. But Cato stood by the shore, his fishing net folded over his shoulder, his canoe waiting at the edge of the water. Amina watched from their doorway. "Cato," she called softly, "the sky is angry. Wait until morning." Her voice trembled, but Cato did not answer right away. He looked up at the clouds, then at the river. He had caught little fish for many days, and he felt the weight of failure pressing on him again. He needed to try once more. "The storm will pass," he said, though his voice did not sound sure. I will be back soon. She stepped closer, her drum resting by her side. Please, she whispered, the river does not listen to promises. He gave her a small smile, the kind that hides worry. I will be careful, he said, and pushed the canoe into the water. The wind caught his shirt as he climbed in, and Amina felt her heart twist. She watched him paddle away until his figure became small and then disappeared into the distance. The storm waited only a short while before it began. The first drops of rain fell like small stones, fast and cold. Lightning tore across the sky, lighting up the river for a moment, and then the darkness came back, deeper than before. The wind howled, shaking the trees, and the river rose like a wild creature. Amina stood outside, her drum under her arm, her eyes searching the water. She could not see Cato anymore. The thunder grew louder. Rain poured down in thick sheets, drenching the village. People ran for cover, calling out to one another. It's a strong one, they said. Stay inside. But Amina did not move. Her heart pounded faster than any rhythm she had ever played. The river roared so loud that even her drum would have been silent beside it. She whispered his name into the wind. Cato. But only the storm answered. As the hours passed, the rain did not stop. The village was dark, lit only by flashes of lightning. The elders gathered inside their huts, praying for the storm to end. Amina sat by the doorway, her drum in her lap, but her hands did not move. For the first time, she could not find a beat. Her heart felt too heavy. The rhythm that had always lived inside her had gone still. When the storm finally calmed, it left behind silence and broken branches. The river was swollen, its banks muddy and wide. The villagers came out slowly, looking around at the damage. Amina walked straight to the shore. Her feet sank into the wet ground. The canoe was gone. The water moved quietly now, hiding its secrets. She stood there for a long time, her clothes soaked, her eyes wide and empty. Sephew, the neighbor, came and placed a hand on her shoulder. He will return, he said softly, but his words sounded weak. Amina did not answer. She stared at the horizon, where the water met the sky. Somewhere out there, she believed, Cato was still fighting. The thought was all she had left. That night, no drumbeats filled the air. The village felt strange without the sound. The children asked, "Why isn't Amina playing?" The mothers hushed them. Even the elders looked uneasy. They had never known a morning or evening without her music. It was as if the whole land had lost its heartbeat. Amina sat alone inside her hut, staring at her drum. Her fingers traced the edge of it, but she could not bring herself to play. "Not tonight," she whispered. "Not while he is out there." She listened to the quiet, a quiet so deep it hurt. Every drop of rain that fell from the roof sounded like a heartbeat that had stopped. When dawn came, the mist was thick over the river. Amina walked there again, her drum still by her side. The air was cold, and her steps were slow. She looked across the wide water, searching for a sign, a piece of wood, a net, anything. There was nothing. Only the soft lapping of waves and the cries of distant birds. Behind her, the villagers watched silently. They wanted to comfort her, but no words felt right. Everyone knew what the river could take and what it might never return. Amina stood for hours, not speaking, not moving. The drum hung from her shoulder like a shadow. 4 years, it had been her voice, her pride, her joy. But now it felt too heavy to touch. Her hands, once so full of energy, hung at her sides. The rhythm that had once awakened the village now slept inside her heart, quiet and cold. By midday, the sun came out, shining on the wet earth. The children ran and played again, but even their laughter sounded softer. The air still carried sadness. The elders spoke in low tones, saying prayers for Cato's safe return. They said, "The river tests the brave, but it may still be merciful." Amina listened, but said nothing. Days passed. Every morning, the people waited for her drum, but the village stayed silent. It was strange. Without the beat, the mornings felt dull, the air heavy. The fishermen said even the river seemed slower. The birds did not sing as loudly. It was as though the whole world was waiting for a sound that no one could make but her. One evening, Sephew came to her hut. He sat quietly for a while before speaking. "Amina," he said gently. "The river took him, but life must go on. You must play again." She looked at him, her eyes red from crying. "How can I play when I cannot feel the rhythm?" she asked. "My heart is gone with him." Sephew lowered his head. "Then let the drum call him home," he said softly. That night, Amina sat by the river again. The moon was full and bright, its light silver on the water. She placed the drum on her lap and closed her eyes. Slowly, she lifted her hands and gave the drum one soft beat. The sound was small, almost shy. It echoed faintly across the river. She waited, then struck it again, louder this time. The sound carried farther, blending with the wind. Each beat was filled with longing. It was not a song of joy, nor of celebration. It was a call, a plea. Her hands trembled, but she kept playing. The rhythm rose and fell like the tide, gentle but steady. The villagers heard it and came out of their huts. No one spoke. They only listened as the sound spread through the night. The river shimmered in the moonlight, and for a moment Amina thought she saw something, a shadow far out on the water, moving slowly. Her heart jumped, but when she looked closer, it was gone. She kept playing, her tears falling on the drum. The sound did not stop until her hands grew weak. When she finally rested, she whispered into the quiet air, "Come back to me, Cato." The river gave no answer, only the soft sound of waves touching the shore. She stayed there until morning, her drum beside her, her heart both empty and full. For the first time, the village understood how deep her music ran, not just in sound, but in love. They realized that her silence was not the end of her rhythm. It was the space between beats, waiting, hoping, believing that one day, the next sound would return with him. The sun had not risen for Amina in 2 long days. The light came and went, but to her it felt like endless night. She had not eaten, nor had she slept. Her eyes stayed fixed on the river, as if her watching alone could call him back. The villagers brought her food, but she did not touch it. They spoke softly around her, but she heard nothing. The only thing she heard was the silence, the same silence that had taken the place of her drum. On the morning of the 3rd day, the air was still. The river looked calm again, smooth like glass, but Amina did not trust its quiet face. She sat on a stone by the water, her drum beside her. Her hands rested on it, but she could not bring herself to play. She whispered to the river, "You took him from me. Bring him back." Her voice cracked. A bird flew across the sky, and she watched it disappear over the trees. Far away, on the other side of the river, a man lay on the muddy bank. His body was weak, his clothes torn, his skin pale from cold and exhaustion. It was Cato. The storm had thrown him far down the river. For 2 days, he had drifted, holding on to a broken piece of his canoe. He had no strength to shout, no strength to move. The rain had stopped, but the sun had burned his skin and the cold had bitten into his bones. Still, he was alive. When he opened his eyes, he saw the blue of the sky. He coughed, and the sound startled a flock of small birds nearby. Slowly, painfully, he sat up. His whole body ached. His arms were scratched, and his hands shook. He looked around, confused, until he saw the familiar shape of the hills in the distance. His village was somewhere beyond them. He whispered her name. "Amina." The sound of it gave him strength. He stood up, though his legs trembled beneath him. Step by step, he began to walk. His feet sank into the mud, and the sun pressed down on him, but he did not stop. The river followed beside him like an old friend and an old enemy, whispering softly as it moved. He thought of Amina's drum, of how its sound had always filled the air. He had once wished for silence, but now he longed to hear it again. By midday, his clothes were dry from the sun, but his strength was nearly gone. He found a small stream and drank from it, the water cool against his dry lips. Then he continued walking. The hills grew closer, and he began to recognize the trees, tall ones with wide roots where children used to play. He smiled weakly. He was almost home. In the village, Amina still sat by the water. The people had stopped trying to comfort her. They had done what they could, brought food, lit fires, said prayers. Now they only waited, just as she did. Some of them had begun to believe that Cato would never return. That afternoon, The sound of footsteps came from the far side of the path leading to the river. At first, no one noticed. The women were washing clothes, the children were chasing each other through the grass. Then one boy stopped, pointed, and shouted, "Someone is coming!" The villagers turned. At first, they saw only a shadow moving slowly toward them. The figure limped, stumbling every few steps. Amina looked up, her heart jumping for the first time in days. She stood, blinking in the sunlight. When the figure came closer, she saw him. His face was thin, his body weak, but his eyes, those eyes she knew. "Cato!" she cried. She ran toward him, her feet barely touching the ground. He dropped his broken net and opened his arms. When she reached him, she fell against his chest, holding him tightly. He was wet and cold, but she did not care. She could hear his heartbeat, slow but steady. Tears ran down her cheeks as she whispered, "You came back. The river did not take you." He smiled faintly, his voice rough from thirst. "The river tried," he said. "But your drum, I heard it. Even far away, I heard it." She looked up at him in surprise. "You heard my drum?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes." The sound came through the storm. "It kept me awake when I wanted to close my eyes forever. It told me to come home." The villagers gathered around them, clapping and crying with joy. The children jumped and shouted, "He is back! Cato is back!" Even the elders smiled, lifting their hands to the sky in thanks. The whole village came alive again. Amina led Cato to their hut. She brought him food and warm water. He ate slowly, every bite like a victory. When he was done, he looked at her and said, "I understand now." She tilted her head. "Understand what?" He pointed to her drum, sitting quietly in the corner. "Your music. It was never just noise. It was your heart. It was life." Amina's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since the storm, she smiled, not the small, polite smile she gave to others, but the real one that reached her eyes. She picked up her drum and sat beside him. "I thought I lost my rhythm," she said softly. "Without you, my hands could not move." He reached out and touched her fingers. "Then play," he whispered. "Play for both of us." She hesitated for a moment, then lifted her hands and struck the drum gently. The sound was soft at first, like a whisper, like the first breath after crying. Then it grew stronger, warmer. The rhythm spread through the air, wrapping around them like light. Cato closed his eyes and listened. Each beat told him he was home. Outside, the villagers stopped their work to listen. The children ran to the sound. "Amina is playing again," they shouted. The people smiled, some even danced. The whole village moved to her rhythm once more. Amina's hands moved faster, her eyes shining. Her heart, once heavy with loss, now overflowed with joy. Every beat was a thank you, to the river for returning him, to the wind for carrying the sound, and to love for surviving the storm. Cato watched her, his heart full. The music filled the hut, the air, the world. He felt his chest rise with each beat, as if her rhythm had become his own. When she finally stopped, they sat quietly together. The air was still, the sound of the drum fading into the distance. Cato looked at her and said, "Your drum saved me." She smiled. "No," she said softly. "Love saved you." The drum only carried its voice. That night, the moon rose bright over the river. The water was calm again, glittering like silver. From their hut, faint sounds of laughter drifted out, Amina's laughter, light and full of life. The village felt whole again. The river, once wild and cruel, now seemed peaceful, as if it too had been tamed by her song. As they lay together, Cato listened to the sound of the night. Somewhere in the distance, a drum still echoed, steady, gentle, alive. It was the sound of love that had survived the storm. The sun rose slowly over the river, painting the water in gold and orange. The sound of birds filled the morning air, but something new joined them that day, the sound of two drums instead of one. For years, the people of the village had woken to Amina's rhythm alone, but now there was another beat beside hers. It was softer, slower, but strong. It was Cato's. Together, their rhythms moved through the air like heartbeats that belonged to one body. The villagers came out of their huts, smiling as they listened. "Do you hear that?" the children asked. "It's Cato. He is playing too." The elders nodded and said, "Yes. The two hearts have become one." Even the river seemed to dance to their sound, its waves rippling gently in time with the beat. Cato had never touched a drum before that day. His hands had always known the rough ropes of nets and the cold feel of river water, not the warm skin of an instrument. But after the storm, after his long journey home, something in him had changed. He no longer saw Amina's drum as noise or pride. He saw it as a living thing, the breath that kept their world alive. He told her, "Teach me to play." At first, Amina laughed softly. "You want to drum?" she asked. He nodded, smiling shyly. "Yes. I want to understand your rhythm. I want to feel what you feel." So she began to teach him. Each morning, after they ate, they sat outside their hut under the wide mango tree. Amina placed her drum in front of her, and Cato sat with a smaller one. She showed him how to hold it, how to feel the tension of the skin, how to let his palms speak. "Do not fight the drum," she told him. "Listen to it. It already knows what to say. You only need to follow." At first, his beats were clumsy and uneven. The children giggled when they passed by and heard him miss a note. Amina smiled and said, "Every master was once a beginner." Cato laughed too, though his cheeks grew warm. He practiced every day, even when his hands hurt. Amina watched him, her heart full of pride. She had always played alone, but now she had a partner. Not someone watching from afar, but someone beside her, sharing her sound. Weeks passed, and Cato's hands grew stronger. His rhythm became steady and deep. It did not dance like hers, but it held the beat firmly, like the earth beneath their feet. One morning, when they played together, Amina stopped and said, "There. You found it." Cato looked at her, confused. "Found what?" he asked. She smiled. "Your rhythm. It's yours, not mine." From that day, their music changed. Amina's beats were bold, bright, and full of fire. Cato's were calm, steady, and full of strength. Together, they created a sound that filled the village with life. The people began to gather every evening to listen. The children danced, the elders clapped, and the air vibrated with joy. The saying began soon after. One night, Sephu, the neighbor, laughed and said, "Amina used to beat her husband every day with her drum, but now he beats beside her." The crowd laughed, but the words stayed. It became a story, not of anger, but of love and learning. People said it with smiles, meaning that Amina and Cato had learned to share their hearts through sound. As the days went by, Cato became known as the drummer of peace. His rhythm was steady and grounding, balancing Amina's fiery energy. When the village celebrated a wedding, they called them both. When they held a ceremony for harvest, they played together. Even during times of sorrow, when someone was sick or when rain refused to fall, their drums spoke hope into the air. Sometimes, Cato still went fishing, but never for long. He no longer battled the river. He worked with it, moving in rhythm with its flow. He said that drumming had taught him patience. "The river and the drum are the same," he told Amina one morning. "They both have a beat. You just have to listen." She smiled, proud of how far he had come. In the evenings, when the sky turned red and the air cooled, they would sit by the river and play softly together. Their sounds echoed over the water, calling the world to rest. The villagers loved those evenings most. They said that even the stars seemed to blink in time with their rhythm. One night, Amina asked, "Do you remember the first time you heard my drum?" Cato laughed. "Yes," he said. "I thought it was too loud. I thought I wanted silence." She tilted her head, smiling. "And now?" He looked at her, his eyes soft. "Now I know silence was empty. Your drum filled it with life." Their love grew stronger with every beat. They no longer needed words to speak. When one started to play, the other knew where to follow. Their rhythms fit together like the river and the sky, each different but meant to meet. Years passed, and children grew up listening to their music. Some of them learned to play too. Amina taught the girls how to find courage in sound. Cato taught the boys how to find calm in rhythm. The whole village became alive with drums. It was said that their home was the heart of music. Even when Cato's hair turned gray and his hands grew slower, he still played beside her. His beats were softer now, but they carried more feeling. One morning, as the sun rose, he said, "You see, Amina? You used to beat the drum alone. Now we beat it together. The rhythm is ours." She looked at him with love and said, "That is what I always wanted." Their story became a lesson for everyone. The elders told it to the young, "Do not fight the rhythm of life. Learn to move with it, and you will find peace." And when travelers passed through the village and asked, "Who are the drummers by the river?" the people answered proudly, "That is Amina and Cato. She beat her husband every day, until he learned to beat beside her." One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, they played their drums one last time for the day. The light faded, and the sound grew softer. Amina looked at Cato and said, "We made music from silence." He smiled and replied, "And silence will remember our song." The river shimmered beside them, carrying the echo of their rhythm far away. The children laughed and danced. The village glowed with warmth. And as the night settled in, the sound of two drums, one bold, one steady, continued to beat in harmony, a promise that love, once found, never truly ends.